Hello and welcome to our maiden edition of Family Life Podcast. I am Fred.
And I am Amma.
It's nice to be with you. Today we're going to be talking about communication in general. And communication is one of those things that impact just about everything, right? Whether you're a parent, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a team lead, whether you're husband, wife, teacher, professor, president, communication is one of those things that we all engage in. But I think what a lot of people miss, I think, is that we assume communication is so easy. But based on our own experiences, right, even as a couple, even as individuals, we realize that communication is such a powerful thing that you have to be intentional, right, about what you say, how you say, when you say it, who you say it to, and all of that. And we're going to be digging into why communication is important. So stay tuned, and we encourage you to share with someone who you think might benefit from this podcast. So why communication? Why is this important, do you think?
So I think communication is basic human and animal behavior, right? We are designed to communicate. So even in the animal kingdom, you would hear the birds chirping at each other. You would hear, the goats and the cows. Like we all communicate in one form or the other. And so even as humans, I think instinctively we're designed to communicate. The challenge sometimes lies in how we communicate and why we're doing it, right? So the why and the how sometimes gets mixed up and then causes all the challenges that we experience when it comes to communication. So I think communication is important because we are designed to communicate. And so you would even find people when they're in a place of solitude and cannot find someone to communicate with, they tend to talk to themselves. I am a talker to selfer. So I think it's necessary that we all communicate because it is innate, it's built in us to communicate.
Yeah, let's actually backtrack a little bit and then define what communication is. And this is just communication according to Fred's definition, right? So communication really is an exchange of thought, ideas, or words between one person and the other, right? Exchange. You talked about the why and the what, which I think is really important because people assume that because you have something to say, you've got to say it.
Right.
Why is it important that we pay attention to the what or perhaps even the why of communication?
Because I think wars have started.
Yeah.
Because someone did not pay attention to the why and the what. And it's, there are issues. Marriages have broken. Families have been split up because people are not communicating clearly. And so there is an importance that needs to be attached to why we are communicating, whatever it is we're communicating, but then also what is it? What are we trying to put across? And I think it brings peace. It also solidifies a relationship. It gives you a sense of security because now you do understand where the other person is, the other person's opinions and perspectives about whatever it is you're trying to, using the word again, communicate and the message you're trying to put back and forth. So
And I've heard people say, I'm sure you've heard people say, I'm just going to say like it is and let the chips fall where they may, right? It's my thought, it's my idea. Why should I even care about how you feel about what I have to say? I mean, it's whatever comes into my head, right? And I say whatever comes into my head, and I really don't. Why should I really care about how you feel and all of that?
Because you love me.
Right.
And because you love me, because you love me, my opinion should matter in whatever the situation is. And my feelings should be taken into account too. And so it is important that we communicate because it is that is my way, your way of letting me into your world. Right?
Yeah.
So let's say something is bothering you and you're not telling me this is bothering me. There's no way. I'm not a mind reader, right? So you saying it or you using nonverbal cues allows me to know that there's something going on. So communication is not always what's coming out of your mouth. And I think we need to clarify that. That communication is not just what comes out of your mouth. It's what is being said and what is, most importantly, what is not being said. Right? Because in our marriage, I could say something like, fine, go ahead. Is the way I'm saying fine, right? So if you're a woman on here, you probably know that we say fine in different. So if I say fine, that means I'm happy. fine means whatever, I'm giving up.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, right? So the nonverbal forms of communication too, and I think we need to address both.
Yeah, yeah. And that's really what makes this very complicated, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you say the fine and then,
Yeah.
but you've got to understand, the tone, right, with which it's being said and the meaning behind it and all
Yeah.
of that. But
Yeah.
timing, I think, is important too, in relationships, in communication, I should
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Why is timing important? I'll kick it off by sharing an example of, when someone is really stressed, like in our relationship, for instance, right? I think we're sensitive to the timing. I mean, there are times that, you're not in the mood for certain types of conversations. And even though it may be a great idea, I may be excited about what I want to share.
Right.
She may not, be feeling it. She may have had a stressful day at work and that may not be the right time. So I think being attentive or paying attention to some of those nonverbal cues, I think is important. And you can have a great idea, and I've said this before, you can have a great idea, great thought, but if that timing is off, that great idea becomes completely nullified, right? Would you agree?
I do. And I think that is also tied into emotional intelligence, right? So most people who do not pick up on subtle cues it's also because they're not emotionally intelligent. So if we're talking about timing and communication, we also need to tie it to being able to say, all right, I can sense that the mood is not right. I can sense that you're tired. I can sense that if I bring up this topic at this time of the day, things are going to get out of control. And because I am emotionally intelligent, I am able to understand my own triggers, but also being able to understand your triggers and responding in an appropriate manner to your triggers, right? And so, yes, timing is important, but I think that it comes easy when you are emotionally intelligent and you can pick up on those subtle cues and say, ooh, maybe this is not the time to bring up this topic because maybe you're hungry, you've not eaten, or you've not slept well the night before. So I think that emotional intelligence and communication go hand in hand.
Yeah, you're so right. And I think for you to be able to read that person or to read the other party, you have to know them, right? Which comes to the who, right? If you really don't know who you're talking to or who your recipient or the audience is, you can miss that. So I think it's, even when it comes to, even in the workplace, right, teams, you've got to know the makeup of your team. Maybe you have 5 or 6 members in your team. Not all team members are created equal, right? You've got to know what makes each person tick, right? There's a saying that if the only tool you have in your hand is a hammer, then everything becomes a nail, right? You just keep banging. But some people may need a little bit of cajoling. Some people may need that, just give it to me straight. Some people may need a little bit of both, right? So I think knowing your audience is important. We, as a couple, we know each other, so we can almost read, right, each other's emotions without really, with very little effort, right? Because we've been, married for 18 years now, right? So
19,
we know 19. I'm sorry, I missed it. Right. 19 years, but you get the point, right? But we've known each other a long time to be able to read each other, right?
Yeah. And I think that, it's knowing who, right? But also being empathetic and putting yourself in the person's shoes. So for example, if I was going to say something to you and I'm thinking, okay, how will Fred receive it? But if I place myself in Fred's shoes, how would I feel being on the receiving end, right? So there is that bit of emotional intelligence, but I also feel like there should be that bit of empathy.
Yeah.
Right. So I personally, my biggest thing with communication, I want you to give it to me straight. Let me, don't embellish anything. Don't beat about the bush. I messed up. Tell me I messed up. I'll get over it. Right. And so,
and I'm the opposite.
And you're the opposite.
I'm not. I try to be diplomatic about it.
I'm like, just tell me straight. What did I do? How should I fix it? Right. And so there is a need to also be empathetic because I like it straight. I can tend to be very blunt with people because I would take the bluntness, and I'm fine with taking bluntness. And because I'm blunt, I can be blunt, and I come across blunt because that's all I know, right? And so for me to be able to communicate clearly And I've been blunt in so many situations, but there's times when now I'm realizing, okay,
Yeah.
maybe I shouldn't be as blunt, and that maybe I should put myself in Fred's shoes.
Now
And how
you're more emotionally intelligent, right? Yeah, yeah. She's more emotionally intelligent now, so she knows how to massage those. Yeah,
but yeah, so there's empathy. There's that bit of empathy when it comes to communication. I think that, all of that is learned, and it takes a process. And I think that especially in this world where everyone cancels everyone because
yeah.
we don't like what somebody's saying, therefore we're not talking to you anymore. It takes away that element of, can I be empathetic?
Yeah.
Can I put myself in that person's shoes and say, why are they saying what they're saying? Why are they communicating in this way? And instead of just canceling them, why can't I reach across and say, hey, maybe you should say this to me in a different way, in a different tone. And I also feel like lately, like, people hide behind text messages and computers and phones and be nasty because they don't want to do the face to face. There is someone I was listening to, I can't remember where it was, but they were talking about when you are in conflict with your spouse. I think it was a training I was in, but they were saying when you're in conflict with your spouse and you're talking about the conflict, you should hold each other's hands whilst you are going through the conflict.
Even though I'm upset at you,
I can't do it. I cannot.
Then what's the point, right? Just let me say.
So the point is, if I'm holding your hands, I'm connecting with you, right? And in that moment, it's forcing me to be more empathetic to what I'm saying, right? So they tell you to hold hands, actually.
Well, that's if you're close to that person, right? But what if it's, like a group of people that, you're
so
not...
we're talking, since we're kind of relating more to family life, they're asking, it was just a suggestion. But I've also heard that when you're communicating with someone, and these are practical tools you can take, right? So they say that when you want to talk about something that is a little bit awkward or something that you both are not comfortable about, go for a long drive. And on the long drive, talk about the issue, because first of all, one person is driving and not looking at you, right? And so you can kind of throw things out. So there are two schools of thought on that. There's one school of thought that is saying hold hands, look at each other and have the conflict. Another school of thought is go driving so you're not looking at each other. But I think it comes down to just being empathetic. Honestly, I think it does.
Empathy is cool. And
absolutely.
We have 3 minutes more. We're going to wrap this up. We don't want to make this too long, so you can come back. But what are some of the practical takeaways for our listeners here when it comes to communication? Because you have those who say, "Man, I just don't have the patience to do this type of stuff." But you really need to, because it's like we said in the beginning, you have to be intentional about it. You just can't, amongst the top 10 lists of things that causes divorce in relationships, in marriages, communication ranks up there, right? So that's why this really is important amongst, finances and, infidelity and things like that. Communication is huge, which is why we're taking our time to kind of peel back the onion a little bit on why this is important. So some practical examples or takeaways that we want to leave with you as we kind of wrap up this first edition is what?
So I want to, before I answer that question, I want to give a quick example of a communication situation that we found ourselves in recently. So Fred was working on something. I'm sitting on the step just talking to him, and I wanted to express certain feelings to you. Remember that? And one thing Fred said to me was, just say it, and I think the reason why I was stalling was because I was afraid that whatever I would say, number one, probably won't come across. I didn't want to accuse him. I wanted him to hear me, but I also had this emotion attached to what I was saying. So I was very reluctant in what I wanted to say. And then Fred kept saying, just say it. Just say it. So I think my biggest tip, the first tip, if I have to leave any tip, would be, just from our experience as husband and wife, would be just say it, like Fred was saying. Just say it to your spouse, because your spouse knows you better than anyone else, right? They know you. They know your place in life. They know your heart. They know where you're going. They know you more than, that's my point. They know you more than anyone else. So just say it. If you say it honestly and truthfully and being true to yourself, being authentic, I feel like it will come out right. It's usually when we wrap what we want to say in all these emotions that sometimes it comes out, harsh
Yeah.
and too blunt.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes down to communicating with your spouse, just say it.
Yeah.
Just say it.
Yeah.
Be respectful, but let it out.
Yeah.
And then you guys can talk through it and
Yeah.
get to the place of. And I think people don't communicate also because they're afraid of hurting each other, or afraid of what the other person would say.
Yeah.
And so just say it.
Yeah, and I think the timing is also key. We've talked about timing a couple of times,
Yeah.
but don't say it. Say it, but don't say it at a time when you're emotionally worn out, you're tired, you're frustrated, someone's ticked you off. Choose a time when both of you have a clear space, right, where you're communicating, you're all being rational. Because if one person is upset or you're upset, yes, you're going to say it, but it's going to come across wrong. And you know, what do you mean by that? And because before you know it, this is spiraling into an entirely different thing. So mean what you say, right? Say it, but choose a time when both of you are in a clear space, and hopefully that should go well. So
yeah, we did it.
Yeah. Anything else to add?
Just say it.
Just say it, right? But choose a time and place. We hope you've enjoyed this first edition of our podcast. We're going to be coming your way with more topics, but we encourage you to share examples if you feel so inclined, or share with other people. But the purpose of this is really to help us become better communicators and in our relationship. So thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, stay well.
Bye.
Bye.